Hello and welcome to episode 3 of Life at the Chocolate Factory. This episode is called How I Learned to Fly. In the previous episodes I've given a chronological account of how everything happened, and I've told you that things really shifted for me, and the person I am today is far from the person that I was 3 years ago now. In order for all of these things to shift, I obviously needed to make a lot of changes in my life personally. I needed to change up my routine, the way that I was living my life, and that is how I learned to fly. So I'm going to talk about that in this episode. Now, I just want to make some things clear. The first thing is that I'm not talking about this in a way where I'm telling others to do what I did, because I believe that this is really personal, and the changes that you make in your routine need to fit into your own life. And the changes that I made were intuitive, and they were the best changes for me. But I would never tell anyone else that they should do what I did, because I am not licensed to do that. And I don't really think that works. With that being said, I'm really excited to share this with you, and I hope that, it might inspire some people to make the changes that they need to make. And I also want to start by saying that I believe that everyone can fly. We just need to learn how to use our wings. But I think that unfortunately, most people spend their entire lives looking up to the skies in awe of the birds, not knowing that they too can soar through them. I think that most of us, and I'm speaking as someone who was one of these people, think that we're not capable of doing this or that it's too difficult for us, that it's not going to happen for us in this lifetime. And so we stop dreaming, we stop having visions, and just conform to what we think we're meant to conform to. And I think it's really unfortunate, because I think what the past couple of years have really taught me is that the sky is the limit. You can go so far if you set your mind to it. It's really hard though, and the sacrifices that I've made and the changes that I've made in my life have not been the easiest changes. So it's not the easiest path, but if you train yourself, if you master yourself, you can do anything you set your mind to. And I'm sure it sounds cliche, but it's true. With that being said, let's talk about how I changed everything and how... I don't know why I'm this nervous. I'm really nervous recording this video, but so be it. We're here to do it, so I'm gonna do it. So when all of this started for me, I was really weighed down by self-limiting beliefs. But as I told you, April 2022 was a big shift for me, and something awakened within me. And I realized that I could do way more than I had told myself that I could do. Now, I didn't realize that I needed to unlock my full potential. That's something that came. I thought that I had done that by, becoming aware of that part of me. But truly unlocking my full potential is something that came after. I think I started feeling it in the spring of 2024. I didn't really realize what it was before then, and that's when I started becoming more balanced as a person. I remember that the first thing that I did that was truly essential for my journey was that I stopped being in my head. I realized that I needed to, sorry, I got distracted. But I stopped being in my head. I realized that I needed to create changes, and I realized that I couldn't just think about them. I realized that in order to create change, I needed to make decisions. And I think decision making is the most difficult part of the process, because you might get an intuitive urge to create a change or to do something. Your intuition is telling you that, yes, this is the path that you should choose. This is something that you should do. But if you let an hour pass, your fear and your ego is going to tell you, no. Are you stupid? Are you out of your mind? It's never gonna work. It's not safe. And all of this fear is gonna start coming up. And obviously, when you start going down that route, you get into a rabbit hole, and it's really difficult to do what your intuition was telling you to do. And you might just walk in circles wanting to do something without being able to do it. But truly, I think, and I really, really think that you should just listen to your gut. When you get an intuitive pull to do something, sure, you can think about it, but most of the time your gut is right. It's telling you that this is something that you should do, and you shouldn't overanalyze it in your head, because if you don't make decisions, you're not going to get anywhere. So I think that the first thing that I learned was to make really quick decisions. And that's something that I've really applied onto my business, because when you run a business, you can't walk around and think about things for ages. Most of the decisions that you make are like, it's really impossible to know what they're going to result in. You can weigh your risks, but you can't really know what's going to happen in the future. Anything can happen. And I have a good example of this just recently. It was in December where my investor and I had to make a really difficult decision. And, we were just walking in circles because we were both scared of making this decision. But doing that was costing us more than just making the decision and implementing the changes that we had to implement to move forward. So, quit your job if that's what you want to do. Start your business, start a hobby, start making content. I think that that's like the main thing. And that's a piece of advice that I would give to anyone, to just listen to their gut. Then I needed to change up my routine. Now, I had a pretty good routine in place before all of this started. I would get up at like 4:30 in the morning. I would go to work, I would meditate, I would go to the gym, but I wasn't really doing any of this from a place of self-love. It was quite the opposite. I was working out because I wanted to look a certain way. I was telling myself that I wasn't good enough. That's why I was forcing myself to get up early, because I was like, you're not competent, you're not capable. And I wasn't really embodying any of these things that were in my routine. I was just doing them because I felt like I had to do them. But I think the biggest shift that happened, that changed for me, was that I started being more intuitive about my routine. I started tapping into what my body wanted me to do. So when it came to my workouts, I stopped doing the workouts that I hated, and I started doing things that I enjoyed. For example, I started aerials. I stopped doing lifting heavy weights because I hate that. It's not something that works for me. So I really started doing things that I enjoyed doing, and I completely stopped caring about like how it would change my body. That was the thing that mattered the least to me. So that was, a big shift, and everything changed when I did that, because I truly started enjoying movement. And I also created a big shift in my eating habits, where I started eating intuitively, and where I didn't have this like rigid meal plan that I was following, because I've had eating disorders, and letting go of that control was really difficult for me, but it's something that was a game changer. And as for waking up early, I asked myself, I was like, why are you waking up early? What's, the purpose of it? And I started reflecting on all of these things, and I realized that I really enjoy being up early. I love waking up before everyone else. I love not picking up my phone, just reading a book when I wake up, and, I really enjoy it. But I also realized that I was going to the gym in the afternoons, but I realized that in the morning hours, when I have that new and fresh energy, that's when I want to hit the gym. So I created certain changes in my routine because I felt like that was more compatible with what I wanted to do. And so my routine started becoming a routine that I had created based on self-love and not self-hatred. And the goal was just to become more efficient and to be able to utilize my energy in the best way possible. Because I feel like before then I was relying heavily on caffeine. I had these like dips. I was super low energy during some periods. And then also, for example, waking up early. Yes, I did wake up early, but then I was just waiting to have time off. So I would take like a month off of work. And during that month, I would wake up really late. I wouldn't, it wasn't sustainable. But when it started coming from a place of self-love, and when I truly understood why I had created those routines for myself, I started loving them. And even if I had a day or two off work, I would stick to them because it wasn't something that I felt pressured to do. And then I started becoming more disciplined as a result of it. So that was really cool. And that was a big game changer for me because all of a sudden I had more energy, I was more motivated, I was more disciplined, and that started creating different results. And another thing that was big for me was that my whole life I'd been told that I was messy and unorganized, and that was my personality. So that became a narrative that I kept telling myself, that I'm messy and unorganized and that's just the way I am. But I don't know what happened, but in the spring of 2022, I just lost it. I completely lost it. When I was moving into my new apartment, I just threw away and donated everything, like everything that I could find, because I was collecting stuff that wasn't even useful anymore. And so I got rid of all of that. I donated everything that could be donated. And I just realized that I don't need this much stuff. I don't need to shop 24/7. It's not good for the planet. And I don't even know what clothes I own. So, I went into this mindset of if I buy something, it should be something that I really, really like. So I stopped buying a lot of unnecessary things. And when I moved into my new apartment, I tried to keep it as minimalistic as possible. Now, bear in mind, like interior-wise, I love maximalist interior design, but I just knew that I needed to make this shift because I needed my surroundings and my environment to be super clean when all of these things were so chaotic on the outside. And it was super nice. And I got into the routine of cleaning my apartment regularly, keeping everything super organized. And I think that was the first self-trust thing for me, where I was like, whoa, you're not messy, you're super organized. How did this happen? It was super cool because I just went from being a super messy person to becoming super organized. That was one of the first things that happened. And so that's related to another project that I had. And I was doing this, I didn't really realize that I was doing this in 2022. This really hit me last year, in the beginning of last year. I realized that there was this voice in my head that was telling me I couldn't do things. And that voice was really sneaky because it would also tell me, if you love yourself, you should let yourself rest. But it wasn't telling me that. It wasn't my intuition. It was my mind, because it wasn't telling me that when I needed to rest, because my body would tell me if I needed to rest. It was kind of like sabotaging things. It was basically the same narrative, but now it was, changing into something that was coming from a place of self-love. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was self-sabotage, because I would tell myself oh, you need to rest, don't go to the gym this week, be nice to yourself. But it was making me feel worse than if I had gone to the gym, because, But I started challenging that voice, and I started becoming aware of the difference between that voice and my intuition. And that was extremely difficult because, it's really hard to know when your mind is tricking you versus when your intuition is actually telling you to do something. But what I realized was that my intuition was straightforward. That voice made me second guess everything, and I was unsure of things. Whereas my intuition was yeah, this is what you need to do. Leave it. So I started challenging that voice, and I did a lot of things that voice was telling me I couldn't do. And I think running was one of those things, because I'd always have that voice oh, but you're not even interested in running. you don't even like running. And that's true. I'm not really the biggest fan of running now, but I did enjoy it for a year. But I think a lot of that stemmed from insecurity of like, you can't run. Why would you be able to run? Because my whole life I'd heard that I wasn't able to run. And so that was like one of the things that, you know, my mind was telling me that you can't do this. So I decided that I needed to start running, and I did. And I started enjoying it. You know, this year I really realized that it's not something I enjoy it. I can go on a short run, but I prefer other types of exercise, and that's completely fine. But I proved to myself that I can run. And that was really cool. The effect that that had on my business is insane, because I kept increasing my pain threshold, and I kept like going against the voice that I had in my head that was telling me I couldn't do it. And I started applying that to my business, and it was like, boom, it just created so much change within my business, and that was super cool. But yeah, really challenging that voice has been a real game changer for me. I also changed my circle of friends, and this was extremely difficult because I've now recently a lot of new people have come into my life, but I felt extremely alone for a while. But I quickly realized that some of the people I had connected with were trauma bonds and people that I didn't really have much in common with when I started changing up my routine. And you know, getting out of my relationship was one of those things. And though I have a lot of love for my ex, that's not it. But it was just a version of me who was in that relationship, a version that I no longer was. That was a big shift. I just felt like all of my old friendships were dying, and it was really difficult for me to handle that because these were people that I had spent most of my life with and I had been really connected with. But I would feel like I had to do things that I didn't want to do to be friends with them. I had to go out partying. I didn't enjoy partying, and I had to talk about certain things that I didn't really find interesting, and I had to pretend to be someone that I wasn't. And I wasn't really connecting with anyone because I hadn't built myself up yet. So I didn't even know who I was, and everyone was just leaving my life, and I was there alone. And that was hard because I'm an extremely social person. So that was a massive shift, going from, you know, having something to do every weekend to basically just sitting at home alone with your dogs. But it was something that I felt like I needed to do because, again, I think that friendships that are no longer serving you, relationships that are no longer serving you, inhibit your growth. That doesn't mean you're better than someone else. That doesn't mean that they're not going to come back around when things change, but they mean that you turn into a version of yourself that you just don't need to be. That's how I would analyze it in my head. And that was also interlinked with changes that I did. For example, I'm still not like completely sober. Like, if, you know, I haven't had wine since October of 2023, but honestly, like, I'm not telling myself I can never have a glass of wine again. It's just that my body started feeling like weird when I was having alcohol, so I stopped having alcohol. And it was like certain things I was just feeling like, soda was another one of those things. Again, I give myself food freedom, but I just felt really repelled by it. I don't know why. It was super weird because I loved my Diet Coke, but I was just feeling extremely repelled by it. I stopped drinking alcohol. There were a lot of like shifts in my diet. And again, I have complete food freedom, but I just started feeling that I needed to listen to my body more and listen to what it needs, what it doesn't want, and when to have what. Because at certain times, you know, you want fast food and fries, but at certain times you don't. And it's the same with salad. I'm not going to force myself to eat like 3 salad leaves when I'm really starving. I really started connecting with that, and that created a lot of changes in my habits. And it was the same with like, you know, scrolling on social media. It's not very appealing to me. I feel like heavy when I do that. So I stopped doing that. And I also stopped feeling the need to like constantly have conversations going on with people, because that's something I feel like I had a lot of like codependent tendencies where I needed to talk to someone all the time, and I felt really repelled by that. I love connecting with people and speaking to them when there's something to say, but you know, having to update someone or constantly be with someone is not very, it wasn't for me. It wasn't very healthy for me. And I started really getting into meditation. I would meditate every morning and afternoon, and I started reading books, and I was just really trying to get to know myself. What was really difficult with the changes that I was making was that I wasn't really seeing any instant results. I wasn't seeing any results at all. I had, you know, left a long-term relationship. I was sitting alone in my apartment with no friends. My business wasn't doing very well. I wasn't feeling great as a person, and the results were not instant. I had, at first, like maybe the first week, I started feeling great, but then I was like, what is this? I had to give up everything, and I'm just sitting here, and there are no results. I'm not really seeing any significant changes, and obviously that was extremely difficult. But as time passed, and especially during the fall of 2023, I realized that I started thriving under pressure. I had increased my pain threshold, and the first thing that I noticed wasn't that my reality was shifting. It was that my perspective was changing. Whenever these big challenges came up, I wasn't freaking out. I was seeing them, and this was huge. My perspective had completely changed. I was seeing them as lessons. I was seeing them as a way to get better, to improve myself, and to align with what I needed to align with. And you know, when something really horrible happens, it's difficult to have that. Before, I would just walk around and feel sorry for myself and cry, go into a victim mentality and self-sabotage. But now it's like, okay, well, what can I do to prevent something like this happening? Or is this, you know, can I circle this back to something within me that needs to change? And that was wild, because I was seeing things in a completely different way. And that was the first thing that happened. But again, physical reality was beyond chaotic. It was a tornado and nothing was moving forward. And then suddenly, especially in 2024, I think it was the fall of 2024 that my physical reality completely shifted. So think about it. It was like a 2-year long process, but suddenly my physical reality was shifting. And I was like, oh my God, all of these changes, everything that I've implemented have led to this moment. I've finally stepped into like a new version of me, and it took so long, and it took so much just like pure fate, because nothing was changing. I was just keeping myself disciplined, hoping that, you know, I was just creating all the changes. I was just going through all the pain in the hope that something would change in the future. And that came in 2024. And that was completely wild. And I was like, whoa, I so see it right now. If I got organized and that led to this, I started getting good at making quick decisions. That led to that. And, you know, it was really an aha moment, a full circle moment, but it took a while. What I'm realizing now is that I feel like I've come into like a different stage in my life. And what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to outsource things that were essential 2 years ago, but that are just really taking up my time that I can pour into my purpose right now. So there's certain chores and things that I just feel like I shouldn't really be putting this much time into those things. I can start delegating more, and I can start outsourcing certain things that I don't need to do. I know I'm an organized person. Maybe I don't have to organize everything myself. Maybe I can get some help doing that. So I'm trying to, you know, pick out things that I feel are unnecessary for me to put my energy into in order to be able to pour more of my energy into my purpose, because I feel like my work, my life's purpose is getting bigger and bigger, and it's requiring more of me. Whereas before, it was more about me and building myself up. And I'm still doing that. I love self-improvement. It's amazing. But I think right now I need to shift my energy into my work, into Vegan Delights mostly, and into, you know, excelling at exercise and stuff like that. So with that being said, I think I'm going to go through what a day in my life looks like. This routine, a lot of people that I speak to think that I have an extreme routine, but I love it. I absolutely love it. Like, I wouldn't change it for anything in the world because it allows me to thrive as a person. Okay, that was so weird, but my camera literally just like broke while I was recording. It's a completely new camera as well, which makes it even weirder. Anyways, I'm not gonna give up. So here I am. What I wanted to tell you was what a day in my life can look like. So I wake up at like 4:30, 4:45, and I love reading before I pick up my phone. So I always start by reading, and then I meditate, and then I look at my phone. After that, I walk to work. I walk to the factory with my 2 dogs, and I leave them at the office before I go to the gym. So I exercise like 5 to 6 times a week. And then when I come back from the gym, I start work. And I usually do heavy, like deep work during the mornings. And then I have lunch. And then I do fun work in the afternoon because that's when my energy starts dipping. After that, I come home. I love doing some extra stretching and mobility when I get home. And then I cook. I tidy everything up and I go on a long lunch walk with my dogs. I forgot that one. And then I just like crochet or read or do something fun. Sometimes I have a nice TV show that I'm watching. And then I go to bed at 8. And that's my life. But I really enjoy it, honestly. Like, before I would stay up late, and I honestly don't really see a point in that. So that's what a day in my life looks like. And during weekends, I record my podcast, I work out, I do stuff that I enjoy doing. And I love spending a lot of time out in nature. So, and since I have my dogs, they love it too. So it's perfect. So basically, all of these changes that I've made have led me to become the person that I am today. And it took ages for me to see that shift within myself and to start seeing that shift in my reality. But as it started coming, I realized that we're all superheroes. Like, there's no limit to what we can do. And it's so cool when you tap into that power within yourself and when you stop making excuses for yourself, when you stop telling yourself, I can't do it, it's not for me, I'm not there yet. Like, when you stop doing that and when you tap into your power fully, it's a game changer. And it's so cool to see how that shifts your reality. I think this is what freedom is. When you've mastered yourself to an extent where you know that you can go anywhere you want, and when the external things are no longer affecting you, that is self-mastery. And when you've mastered yourself, you can do whatever you want. And I think that is super cool. And yeah, I think that there's a superhero within each and every one of us. But I also think the process of becoming that superhero is extremely difficult. I feel like I went through hell. I feel like the old me died completely in order for me to be able to become the new me. That was it. So those are the changes that I had to make to become the person that I am today. I don't really have much else to say about that. I think that this has really helped me realize my purpose in life. And I think that in the next episode, I'm going to talk more about my purpose and how I really tapped into it and connected with it and how I started implementing it into everything that I did. With that being said, I just want to thank you for listening. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties that we are experiencing, but yeah, that was it.